Hello, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we bring you powerful breaking developments from Eastern Europe, where a sudden wave of unrest has erupted in Belarus, shaking the political foundations of the country and sending shockwaves through Moscow. This dramatic turn of events is being called the Belarus Mutiny, triggered by mass protests against President Alexander Lukashenko, and made even more volatile by growing claims that Russian President Vladimir Putin has betrayed his long-time ally. For decades, Belarus and Russia have stood side by side politically, economically, and militarily, but now that alliance appears to be fracturing in full view of the world, what was once a quiet authoritarian partnership has now become a battlefield of mistrust and power struggle. The streets of Minsk, Brest, Grodno, and other major cities in Belarus erupted in protest after reports began circulating that Lukashenko had lost control of several military units near the Polish border. Early reports claimed that armed units refused orders from Minsk and demanded political reform and economic transparency. These mutinous soldiers were soon backed by thousands of civilians who poured into the streets chanting slogans against Lukashenko's rule. Protesters accused the regime of corruption, economic failure, and working only for Russian interests instead of the Belarusian people. Crowds carried signs demanding freedom from Kremlin influence, calling Lukashenko a puppet of Putin and accusing Moscow of exploiting Belarus resources and sovereignty. What happened next caught many by surprise. Eyewitnesses reported that units of the Belarusian military, believed to be loyal to Lukashenko, suddenly began clashing with rogue units and unidentified armed groups who claimed they were defending the people. Gunfire and explosions were heard in several districts of Minsk late into the night. Videos circulating online show what appear to be armored vehicles moving through city streets, while protesters scatter to avoid the violence. Social media platforms were soon blocked across Belarus as the government attempted to shut down the flow of information. But it was too late. The world had already seen the flames of uprising. Meanwhile, Lukashenko appeared on state television delivering a furious speech in which he blamed foreign agents and so-called NATO-backed terrorists for orchestrating what he called an attempted coup. He vowed to crush what he described as traitors within the military, and claimed that certain high-ranking officials were being investigated for espionage and treason. However, within hours of his broadcast, a shocking report emerged from Russian state media suggesting that Moscow had been in secret negotiations with Belarusian opposition figures. The report quoted anonymous Kremlin insiders who claimed Putin had lost faith in Lukashenko's ability to maintain order and was considering supporting a political transition in Belarus to protect Russian interests. This bombshell triggered outrage in Belarus and instantly shifted the tone of protests. Crowds that were originally chanting against Lukashenko began accusing Putin of betrayal, and a sense of deep paranoia spread within the Belarusian government. Opposition leaders now argue that Belarus is not only fighting for democracy, but also struggling to survive between two powers: Lukashenko's dictatorship on one side and Russian intervention on the other. The Belarusian people are demanding independence, neither controlled by an autocratic ruler nor manipulated by Moscow. Lukashenko called Putin for support, invoking bilateral defense agreements between the two countries. But to Lukashenko's shock, Moscow did not immediately send military assistance as it did during the Wagner uprising in Russia in 2023. Instead, Putin released a carefully worded statement urging both sides, Lukashenko and the opposition, to avoid bloodshed and resolve their differences peacefully. This was a major shift from Russia's typical strong support of Lukashenko, and experts believe this was a sign of Putin distancing himself from his long-time ally. Some analysts suggest the Kremlin may be planning to install a new leader in Belarus who would be more controllable and less unpredictable than Lukashenko. Others believe Putin is simply avoiding a costly new conflict while already engaged in military operations in Ukraine. The situation on the ground continues to escalate. Protesters have started building barricades in Minsk and several cities to block security forces from entering residential areas. Fires are burning in streets where clashes have already turned deadly. Hospitals are overwhelmed with the injured, and the Belarusian Red Cross has appealed for emergency assistance. There are unconfirmed reports that certain police units have refused to fight protesters, forcing Lukashenko to deploy elite loyalist units to regain control of strategic locations, including the presidential palace, broadcasting headquarters, and key bridges. At the same time, Western nations are closely watching the mutiny unfold. The European Union has called for an emergency meeting to discuss Belarus, condemning Lukashenko's violent crackdown and warning Russia against intervention. NATO member states bordering Belarus, including Poland and Lithuania, have increased border security amid fears of a refugee wave or potential cross-border instability. Poland's prime minister released a statement saying that Poland will not interfere but stands ready to support Belarusian civilians fleeing violence. Lithuania has gone a step further by offering asylum to Belarusian soldiers who refuse to fire on their own people. Inside Russia, reactions are mixed. Russian state media continues to report cautiously on the mutiny, highlighting the danger of color revolutions inspired by the West. However, Russian social media tells a different story, with many users warning that what is happening in Belarus could soon happen in Russia if economic hardship and political dissatisfaction continue to grow. Some analysts claim Putin is afraid that Lukashenko's downfall could inspire Russians to rise up as well, especially veterans and soldiers disillusioned by the war in Ukraine. Others argue that Putin may deliberately let Lukashenko fall in order to take direct control of Belarus and officially annex it into the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, Lukashenko has disappeared from public view after his last speech. Rumors are now spreading that he may have fled the capital to a secret bunker, or possibly even left the country entirely. A leaked audio recording claimed to be from Belarusian insiders suggests that Lukashenko has lost control over half of the army and that several ministers have already resigned or escaped. The army's top general, Viktor Krenin, has not been seen in public, leading to speculation that he may have defected or been detained. In his absence, rogue commanders are reportedly taking control of military logistics and bases, creating a chaotic chain of command. What makes this situation even more dangerous is the presence of Russian troops already stationed in Belarus. These forces were originally deployed as part of joint military exercises with Belarus and to support Russian operations in Ukraine. However, their current loyalty is now in question. Some reports suggest that Russian troops have been ordered to secure key locations, including air bases and communication centers, to prevent NATO interference. Other reports claim that Russian units are waiting for direct orders from the Kremlin to either evacuate or intervene militarily if Lukashenko falls. Independent journalists and analysts warn that Belarus may now be entering a full-scale civil conflict. The mutiny, which began as a protest against Lukashenko's rule, has now turned into a larger struggle over the future of the nation. Will Belarus remain an authoritarian state aligned with Russia, or will it move toward independence and political reform? The decision may not be in the hands of politicians anymore, but in the hands of soldiers, protesters, and foreign powers with deep interests in the region. The United Nations has called for urgent dialogue and warned that Belarus could become another Ukraine-type crisis if the international community fails to intervene peacefully. Human rights organizations have accused Lukashenko's regime of war crimes, reporting cases of torture, unlawful detention, and fatal shootings by security forces. Amnesty International released a statement demanding immediate access to political prisoners and the release of detained activists. Despite overwhelming resistance, Belarusian state television continues to insist that everything is under control and portrays the mutiny as a small, foreign-backed rebellion. As of now, the situation remains unpredictable. There are signs of major political reorganization inside Belarus, possibly under pressure from Moscow. Some sources claim that a transitional council may soon be announced, possibly including opposition figures acceptable to the Kremlin. At the same time, opposition leaders outside Belarus insist they will not accept any deal that keeps the country under Russian influence. They are calling for new elections, a new constitution, and international guarantees of independence. This crisis has become an intense geopolitical struggle. The fate of Belarus is now a question not just for its people, but for global stability. A collapse of Belarus could open the door for NATO expansion or Russian annexation, both of which carry massive risks. The next 48 to 72 hours may decide the future of Belarus and could even reshape the balance of power in Eastern Europe. We will continue to monitor this developing story very closely and bring you updates as new information becomes available. Stay tuned to this channel for fast and in-depth analysis of world events. If you found this report useful, don't forget to like the video, share it, and subscribe for more real-time coverage of global crises and political developments. Thank you for watching and stay safe as we continue to uncover the truth behind the Belarus Mutiny.